Hey, pizza people, welcome back. Hope you've been keeping it cheesy. We got some exciting content for you today. Looks like we got some new Capenna spoilers to go over. And I'm joined once again by the great Hamhocks. How you doing today, Hammer?
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me, Pizza. I love it getting an opportunity to hang out, and especially when we get to talk about new cards. It's
Oh
not to love.
yeah, the new set's always exciting. Before we dive in, you can find me at twitch.tv/hollywoodpizza. You can find me streaming MTG during the week, usually around 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can also check us out on Sundays on Twitch, where we host the tournaments as well, 3 times a month. All that information in the description below. And Hammer, where can we find you at?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitch as well, twitch.tv/hamhocks42, streaming during the week as well, but in the morning, starting usually around 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'd love to see you out there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Hammer's got some great content, always original
Oh, thanks,
decks
man.
as well. So definitely some cool things to be trying out, always on Hammer Stream. And
Appreciate
let's
that,
go
man. Thank you.
ahead. Yeah, for sure, man. Let's go ahead and just dive right in here. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is we got some triomes, the tri-lands essentially coming back. Now,
Yes.
they don't have the triome name attached, so it's going to be a little bit harder to maybe reprint them in a future set unless we're talking they're just going to get reprinted, in like a Masters type deal. But I'm pretty excited about these, right? These are pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, and interestingly enough, so we have Jetmir's Garden, Raffine's Tower, Spar's Headquarters, Xander's Lounge, and Zayatora's Proving Ground. I don't know if I pronounced those names correctly. I think so. But essentially, these are the completion of the Triome cycle, which we saw from Ikoria. And it's funny you mentioned that because all of these names and all of the locations depicted on these cards are clearly tied to New Capenna. So you're right. How in the world would they possibly reprint these outside of a set like a Masters product or a Commander set that isn't tied to a specific plane? Um, that's the only way I can imagine these being reprinted. But also the triomes that we originally saw that kind of started this whole sequence out in Ikoria. If I'm not mistaken, the word triome is linked to
To Ikoria
habitats
as
on
well.
Ikoria. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's one of those things where the word is just so clean. We've just adopted it to mean a tri-land that enters the battlefield tapped, is all three land types of whatever colors it taps for, that can cycle for 3 mana. Like that's
exactly.
just what the triome is. And here we
Hmm.
have in Ikoria we had the wedges. So we had the enemy color pairs. And this time we have the ally, or not the color triads. I don't know. Anyway, the color trios. And now we have the allied ones. So we had the shards previously. Now we have the wedges, and it's really cool. I'm excited because I know I love building decks in all kinds of different color configurations and trying different kinds of things. And the mana bases are always the issue whenever you have three or more. Whenever you have three or more
Yeah,
colors,
these are definitely
and
gonna
yeah,
impact standard, right? Like these, you can the regular triomes they get played in modern. You can fetch them up. I mean, this is the completion, right? So we
hmm
know for a fact that this land cycle is gonna get played, and it really does help smooth out a lot of these decks that we already see, like the Esper Planeswalker deck. Bring it on, right? That fits right in.
100%. Yes, yeah. That's an easy include. It's not even a consideration. This just goes in the deck. Yeah, it just does. And there are certain cards like you talk about fetching. Being able to crack fetch lands to go grab these triomes is really really cool. There are cards in standard that can fetch lands based on type. And in historic as well. Like Binding
Hmm.
the Old Gods comes to mind.
Yep.
Like that can fetch a forest. Doesn't have to be a basic forest. So I don't know about you, but I'm fetching right now. I'm fetching the Call Time Dual lands because they're the best we've got. Um, but I'm gonna swap those out for Triomes in a lot of my decks right away
Oh yeah, for
because
sure.
it's just so much better.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean it's exciting. It's exciting to get the completion of the cycle, and yeah, every five these cards out of the park, they're gonna get played every format. That's just what
Yep,
happens. Their lands,
it just
they
is what
adds
it
more
is.
than one color, more than two colors. I mean, that's hard to come by, and the only downside it comes into play tapped. And the upside of it is later on you can just redraw a card for 3 mana. End step, anything like that. Like
hmm
these are all huge, huge high upsides. So definitely happy to see this cycle specifically get finished up.
Absolutely. Well, and just like in Ikoria, like the kind of guy who, like, when I go to the store, I'll pick up a booster pack just to see what happens. And when it was like Ikoria, if I cracked a Triumph, I was really ecstatic. Like, that was a great hit. And that's going to be the same case in Capenna as well. If I crack one of these just in a random set booster, just because I'm feeling like it, I'm going to be over the moon with it. You know, and you should be too. These cards are going to be great. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So next up, we actually have another. So we've seen in New Capenna so far is a lot of 3 colors and a lot of cycles. Now, there's another cycle that actually might look familiar if you were familiar with one of the last 3 color sets that we had, not including Ikoria. It was a little bit older than that.
Tarkir.
Cards of Tarkir, exactly. The Tarkir Ascendancy cycles. And we have Broker's Ascendancy, which is the Bant Ascendancy. So this is green, white, blue for an enchantment that says, at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control.
Yep. Yeah, that's I think this card is better than it looks. I could be wrong. Kind of always hard to make these assessments, but you know, being able to Luminarch Aspirant your whole team. You know, Ham, the biggest thing about the Ascendancies, I think that people like forget, is that it's not legendary. So you can actually have 2 of these out, and then all of a sudden your like your planeswalker is getting 2 loyalty, and it's about to ultimate the next turn, right? You're like +2 or +1, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, get another +2, or you know, you're double Luminarch Aspiranting your whole team. Like, that seems kind of absurd, right? Like, especially like if you're like the, I mean, I don't know what deck this goes into. Obviously, by adding all these other shards into the standard format, it could end up being that there's a lot of more like variety of decks. So right now you could say we don't know where this goes in because there's no Bant deck. I mean, outside of maybe the Bant deck that top 8 at our last event, but you know, there is that. So maybe there is a Bant deck out there, but
maybe, yeah.
I think for now, since we don't really know where it's gonna go, and at the end of the day, to me the biggest downside of this card is you need a board presence. I think that's the biggest downside.
I completely agree. I completely agree. If somebody wipes, if you're trying to go wide with creatures and take advantage of this that way, and somebody doomscars your team or Meathook Massacres your team before it has a chance to really ramp up, it just does nothing. It's a 3 mana do nothing enchantment in that situation, and that would feel really bad.
I think what holds this card back for a while, if it does end up getting played even right now, is Wedding Announcement. Wedding Announcement's just better. It's a permanent effect, so any creature you play after the fact is still going to get buffed. I mean, this happens during end step, so you could make the same argument, but like with Wedding Announcement, the biggest upside is you get the first half of it, right? Which is you get 3 tokens, or you get some tokens, some draws, anything like that. So I think with the existence of like Wedding Announcement and the fact that it's a lot easier to cast in 3 color decks even, or just any decks in general, like I think that's what could hold a card like this back for now. But who knows? I mean, maybe 2 or 3 of these in the right deck, and you know, you slam this down turn 5 or 6 after you've already committed a lot to the board, or a decent amount to the board, and all of a sudden the game starts to get out of hand. Or you can even play it in a mid-rangey grindy deck with planeswalkers and some decent sized creatures, and all of a sudden, you know, still turn 5, 6, 7, you're playing this, and all of a sudden your cards are growing, your planeswalkers are a lot harder to kill. And then, you know, like, this is a card, it is a little, it's almost win more, but it really is a card that ends the game. Because if you play it and nobody does anything about it, all of a sudden your creatures, like I said, your creatures growing, you're getting your ultimates. And you know, the thing about planeswalkers is, you know, you spend so many resources attacking it, you spend so many cards trying to kill this one card, but then now it's like double almost the amount of work for you to try to kill that card, unless you have like an outright, like a black removal spell or something, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. I think you hit the nail on the head on what kind of deck needs this, and that's a mid-range deck. I think you're exactly right. A Bant mid-range deck is where this wants to be, because in an aggro deck, you want to be getting as much value early as possible, and you don't want to be in a situation where you have to have 3 specific colors on turn 3 and then get no immediate value for the card that you play.
It's not a
which
creature.
Is very likely to be the case with Broker's Ascendancy.
It needs to be a creature. Like when your aggro deck, you want creatures, and then your spells. It's weird because most creature decks now kind of play like, you know, whatever the best spells they could play is. Either it's going to be, you know, for a while it was like Skyclave, right, as an example.
Yes.
And then Chariot in the green deck, right? These are both different types of cards that are doing the aggressive strategy, right? One of them does make a creature, the other one's going to boost your creature. So this is more falls into the Maul the Skyclave type of slot, where it's just like your extra tool that helps you get over the top of what your other opponent, or even a quote unquote a mirror match type of deal, might be doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, Broker's Ascendancy is actually kind of reminding me of Unnatural Growth, in a way, because Unnatural Growth it's the green enchantment that has 4 green pips in it, so you really need to be in mono green if you're playing that card, or have a very light splash of a second color, but you need to be heavy green. So it's a pain in the butt to cast, but it doubles the power and toughness of all of your creatures in combat. So it just takes.
Yeah, that's actually like the best. I think the best one to put it to. I think.
Yeah, it's difficult to cast, but at the same time, if you do manage to stick it and it goes unanswered, it can take over the game. And I think Broker's Ascendancy is in very much that same mold. And I think being able to cast this out on turn 5 or 6, in a mid-range deck where you have a board presence and be able to hold up some removal or, you know, some protection spells, maybe some counters because you aren't banned after all, could put you in a really powerful, you know, a really beneficial position that could go really well. I mean, could you imagine having 3 or 4 creatures down, throwing Broker's Ascendancy and keeping a negate up, so if your opponent tries to hit a sweeper? I mean, that's a golden spot to be in.
I was thinking a white 1-drop, Luminarch Aspirant, Spell Shaper, or the Paulo Vitor card.
Oh, yep, the Elite Spellbinder. Yeah,
Spellbinder, and then you go end step, Wander, my turn, make a token, Ascendancy. And then and then like you get a counter from Aspirant, you get 2 counters from these end step, and then your Walker goes up 2 more. Like, you're just like, obviously, you know, you're not gonna play that in a mono white deck, but I'm just saying these are the types of like curves that if you built your Bant deck like that, I mean, then you could play some of the other good green cards, right? You could play like a Rangers class in your deck. Chariot's still good in standard. I mean, you could play all these cards, right? In this tempo-y blue deck with like your sideboard Testa Talents and your negates and stuff, you know, to tempo the bigger control decks out or whatever. But you kind of see like the type of deck that you could build, and like, you know, just talking about this, I mean, that doesn't sound bad. I mean,
yeah,
this is a deck you can build now in standard that's good. It doesn't even have this card in it, right? I mean, like,
the more I look at it, the more I like it. You know, when I look at enchantments like this that have these global effects that that may not have a particularly big impact the moment they hit the field. Now, to Broker's Ascendancy's credit, you do get the effect at the end step, so you will get it the turn it comes into play if it's not destroyed at instant speed. So that's nice.
You don't get it right away. Some Ascendancies used to have the comes into play, so that's the thing. I feel like now cards are so much more overpowered now that I'm not sure where these fit. You know, I don't know if 3 mana do nothing yet until the end of my turn is good, but I just know that this card can get out of control very quickly, right? There's cards that we've already seen that we might not have valued as highly, but I think that anytime that you're valuing cards around this time of the season, I think you have to keep an open mind for where the cards could go. And since we haven't seen the whole set, we don't really know what's going to happen yet. We can't be like, this card sucks because it doesn't do anything right away, and competitive play and all this other stuff. It's more like this card has potential. I mean, Kiki Jiki's was a card that most of us overshadowed. You know, no one really was like, that card's gonna be the best thing at the Pro Tour. You know, like, there's so many different things that end up showing up, right? Like, not everyone was on Hullbreaker right away. You know, like a lot of like a lot of people were up and down a lot of different cards. So I think this card has the potential to be really good, but I could also really see like where the floor of it isn't always the best thing, just over a lot of the great points that we've been making here about it, specifically about not having a board. That's the only downside of this card, is not having a board. But even if you don't run creatures, if you have planeswalkers, I mean, why not play a 4-color planeswalker deck with Kaido? Get your Kaido to ultimate sooner or something. I don't know, like, there's options here.
Yeah, I mean, you could do like Selesnya tokens is pretty strong. Why not make it Bant with walkers and tokens? I mean, counterspells. Let's go.
When you
like
play
you can do all kinds
play
of
your
things.
negates for the board wipes. Just test the talents, the board wipe out of their deck. Now they got to deal with all your cards, right? Like, I mean,
the options are there.
Yeah, the options are there.
The pieces are there. Yeah,
standard's open right now. I mean, if anything, this set's gonna add a lot more to standard.
Love it.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on. let's move on to a really cool cycle that is also, we talk about cycles. We're on a bicycle. This whole stream, me and Ham, we're
Yes,
just
absolutely.
pedaling.
We're cycling away
Toward the MTG. So we got over here the charms. The first one we got, if you don't remember the charms, there's always charms. A lot of 3 color sets, 2 color sets, they have these charms that are essentially modal spells that you choose one mode on it and it does that. But sometimes you have 2 options, sometimes you have 3 options, sometimes you have even more than that with cards like a Cryptic Command where you have like 4 options. But specifically these charms, we're going for one option for what essentially each color of the charm is representing. So we have Maestros Charm, which is a blue, black, red for an instant. You choose one. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. Put one of those cards into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. Or each opponent loses 3 and you gain 3 life. Or Maestro's Charm deals 5 damage to a creature or planeswalker. Ham, how do you feel specifically about the charms? And then how do you feel about this card?
So I find charms interesting because with charms, you generally have 3 modes, none of which by themselves are worth the price of admission. 3 mana of specific colors, of 3 different colors, is usually difficult to pull off. I mean, the triumphs are going to be, or, the new cycle of triumphs is going to be helping. Yeah, I'm just going to keep calling them triumphs. What can I say?
Yeah, they're the triumphs. I mean,
they're the triumphs. That's what they are.
Triumphs.
But that name is just so good. Like, it just fits. Anyway, but so the cool thing with charms is the flexibility that you get. That's really the key to these cards. And so with Maestro's Charm specifically, I have a soft spot for Grixis. I'm a Reanimator player
Grixis
at heart.
Ham.
It's just what I do. I love Grixis. It's the best. So I'm a big fan, which is funny. I love playing Grixis, but I don't necessarily love control. I always try to do like weird mid-range Reanimator shenanigans with Grixis.
There's so many different decks you could build in the Grixis color combination.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's one of the great things about Magic, right? There's flexibility everywhere. And Maestro's Charm has my name all over it. Like, this is exactly what I want in one of my cards, specifically that first mode. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put one of those cards into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard.
Yep.
This puts 4 cards into the graveyard. That is a deep dig, sets you up for exactly what you need in your hand for whatever the next turn is, whether that's a land, whether that's, a reanimation spell that you might be trying to tee up here, or a particular piece of removal or board wipe that you might need, depending on what the situation calls for. But putting 4 cards in the graveyard is a big deal because those can be cards with flashback. Those can be reanimation targets. Those can be any number of things. And in Grixis specifically, we have a lot of cool reanimation targets in Standard, one of which we're actually going to be discussing later today. Little teaser on that. So I think that mode is especially valuable, especially in the early game. But if it's in the late game, hitting your opponent for 3 life and gaining 3 life, a 6-point life swing is actually really meaningful, and that can just straight up be lethal if it's late in the game and you've been applying pressure to your opponent. So, I mean, a lot of games are going to be decided by Maestro's Charm just coming off the top, and that's going to feel great when you're the one drawing it.
Oh my god, Lightning Helix!
Boom! Like, yeah, it's going to feel great. Yeah, and it's also it's worth noting for multiplayer formats like Commander, it's each opponent loses.
Yep, each opponent.
Life.
I was thinking the same thing. Yep, each opponent, which is great. That
That's
last
awesome.
ability
Absolutely
is great. I mean, the Esper Planeswalker deck is a deck. I mean, 5 damage. It's gonna kill most Planeswalkers. Yeah. Card is at instant speed, like it. So this card is a great example of what charms do, which is something like the first one, you blue, right? You get card advantage. The second one, right? We got like a black ability, essentially, right? Life drain. And then the third one, we have like the red ability of being able to remove a creature or planeswalker problematic permanent. So at any point in the games, card is never dead.
Yeah.
Card essentially is never dead. It's good against control because it's going to kill planeswalkers, even if, or, just drain them, right? You're like, oh, where are they at? They're like, it's 6. Okay, end step, try to drain you. My turn, drain you again. You lose, right? Like, or, you're digging. And then maybe you're hitting some cards that you can get back from the graveyard. Just like you're saying, even if it's not just a reanimation strategy, it could be just anything that's has to do with the graveyard could come back. So I think this card is a great example and a great start to where the charms are going to take us here as we talk about the spoilers, because they're like exactly what you want out of a Magic card. You want flexibility out of every single card, like for
absolutely.
That's why like the Zendikar lands are good as like an example, just having more options is better.
Yep, more options is never a bad thing. And another key point with all of these charms is that they're instant speed.
Yep.
So if you're in a situation where you have other instant speed reactions that you might want to, hold mana up for, you can hold them up and then end step, just like you're saying. You can blast the charm at whatever mode you want. It was absolutely fantastic. Speaking of charms, we actually have a couple that have been spoiled. So Maestros Charm is the first one we're looking at. The next one that we're going to take a look at is actually in the Esper colors, and that is Obscura Charm. This is a white, blue, black for an instant with, again, 3 modes. First mode, return target multicolored permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I like that. Next up, we have counter target instant or sorcery spell. And then the third mode, destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. So, Pizza, what do you think about this one?
I there's a lot of mixed feelings about this card. I actually think this card's really good. It probably will end up being better. It'll probably be in the middle. I think most of these charms are like 2 to 3 ofs. If back in the day I played 4 absent charms. I thought that charm was like a 4 of, right? Like that charm was nuts. It drew you cards, you put counters on something, or just straight exiled a card pretty much. Like, and this card actually it doesn't feel like that card because it doesn't do the same thing, but it definitely has power. Like getting back a graveyard trespasser is good, right? Getting back a Skyclave apparition feels great. At instant speed.
Well, actually,
like that's good.
Actually, you wouldn't be able to
right?
do that because it has to be a multicolored.
Oh, that's right. These are multicolored, so it actually does hinder you. Oh man,
yes. So that's one of the big things with Obscura Charm is we talk about the flexibility of these cards, but at the same time they are fairly limited.
This one actually does have a little bit of some hindrances. So I'm actually trying to think of what the best things that you can get back with it are right now off the top of my head.
The first one that comes to my mind is Kaito. Like that's the one that you can grab with this, which is pretty rad. But outside of that, there's not much.
Kaito's pretty cool. I don't actually, man, multicolor really does hurt it. I guess if it was like monocolored, a card probably would be pretty powerful. Like talking about like what I'm doing.
Right. Being able to pull up Skyclave apparitions and be able to do kind of weird like sacrifice loops with things like that could be really powerful. But
I don't know.
It'll be very interesting to see what other low-cost multicolor permanents. I mean, we're going into a 3-color set, So, actually, interestingly enough, Obscura Charm can bring back a Broker's Ascendancy from your graveyard.
Yeah, it's permanent.
I don't know what deck could possibly have both of those cards in it, but at the same time,
Triumphs make it possible.
Triumphs make it possible, and who knows what the Obscura Ascendancy is going to look like? The Esper Ascendancy. When we see that, is that going to be able to be grabbed? No.
I mean,
I'm just theory crafting here because we haven't seen these cards yet.
It's a really great point.
It's possible that
there's nothing in right now.
Than it looks right now.
Yeah, if there's nothing in right now, maybe there's going to be something that comes in with this set, right? So I mean, once again, counter instant sorcery is still good, right? Against control, against the mid-range decks. Destroy target creature, planeswalker 3 or less. I mean, destroys Kaito, destroys all the cards I talked about. Actually, do get destroyed by this card.
Yep, absolutely.
But I mean, it's. Maybe that first mode on it does make it harder to play because this card, it is harder to find where this would fit, right? Like you don't slam this in the Esper Planeswalker deck. It costs 3 mana. It's not, if you want a removal spell, there's more efficient removal spells, right?
Right.
So I think this one, maybe that's where the argument comes of this card lacking, where I was like, yeah, this card's great. And now it's like, well, since it doesn't get back most of the cards that you almost want to play with it, it's not as good as I want it to be. So that first mode, which realistically, that first mode is going to be one of the more powerful ones, right? Because you're going to use this card to get back a 2-for-1, like a card that has an ETB. And then, that card's going to do its ETB and then maybe even trade with a creature. So now that, this card, you got more out of all these cards. But instead, if you're don't really have that much value to pull from the graveyard, then, you trying to be proactive by trying to counter one of your, or reactive, by trying to counter one of your opponent's spells. It's not, that doesn't, negate isn't a 4-of card. Negate can be a 2-of in the main deck nowadays, but even then, that's probably a stretch.
Right, exactly. It's nice to have the option, but and even then, this is a bad negate because
Yeah,
it's
this is
only
a
instant
worse
sorcery
negate. It
spells.
doesn't hit planes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's too specific. I don't know. Maybe this card isn't as good as, you know, as we might think. Maybe this isn't. Maybe it's not. You
yeah.
know, maybe it could end up being a card that's either overhyped or really like everyone's too hard on it, right? Like there's two ways it could go.
hmm
I think.
Exactly. I think it is ultimately going to depend on what other cards we see come out of New Capenna. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I think. I think it's going to depend on what the meta looks like when everything shakes out. You know, if we have other 3-drop planeswalkers, 3-drop multiple planeswalkers, I don't know what the other planeswalker, we haven't seen the
Yeah,
planeswalkers from
exactly.
New
I haven't seen
Capenna
them
yet.
yet.
So who knows what what their stats are going to look like. But, we know there's Elspeth, we know there's Ob Nixilis, but we've only seen art. So I'm not sure what I'm not sure what we're going to be able to reanimate with that first ability. I mean, when I see a reanimation ability on a charm, I'm intrigued and I want to make it work
Mm-hmm.
somehow. But yeah, I mean, the only ones that I can think of in these colors, I mean, we got Kaito, Kaito is really the MVP for that first mode. I just
Yeah,
keep coming
right
back to it.
now. Yeah,
But there's
there's
also
not
like
many
what Silver Quill
cards.
Silencer, which is okay, but like, eh.
Unfortunately, I can't. Nothing's really coming to my head right now. That's
Yeah.
like a crazy.
I
I
I
mean,
am
there's
just
some
gonna say this.
stuff.
Can you imagine a world in which Teferi Time Raveler, as originally printed, isn't banned with this though?
Oh, you can do that in
How
modern.
gross is that? I'm
You can
just
just
throwing
do
that out
that in
there. That's
modern,
not a world
man.
we live in, fortunately, but my goodness.
Yeah, or Pioneer. You can is Teferi banned in Pioneer? Probably. I don't know.
I think so, but I'm not sure actually. So yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's so messed up. I mean, you can play this in the hero deck. Get back your hero,
Yeah.
and then you can start going off and making tokens.
There you
Hero
go.
Precinct
Um,
1 or whatever I think it was.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
I feel like Obscura Charm is going to be like the make or break on Obscura Charm is what surrounds it.
Yeah,
Is
what surrounds
really
it.
is if we can get good pieces and if the meta has major threats at mana value 3 or less.
I think
If we
it's
see
more
a
like
lot
what
of
you were
those, then
saying,
yeah.
where you're going to be reanimating random permanents rather more than creatures. I could see this being more like,
hmm
I know it's a bad example because it's monocolor, but get back my the cat 9 lives.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, but like well,
You cycle a permanent away. Let's say there's other cards with cycling. You could cycle a permanent away, and then the next turn you could end step get it back with this. So
it's
maybe
true.
there's a way to do something like that.
Yeah,
These are just
the
thoughts of what could
opportunity
happen.
for ridiculousness is definitely there, and I'm on board for that. I'm definitely I want to find a way to break this card. That's
Oh
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
All right. So we got our next charm here is Cabaretti Charm. So it's
hmm
Naya, red, green, white, instant, choose one. This card deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target creature or planeswalker. Creatures you control get +1/+1, gain trample until end of turn. Create 2 green and white citizen creature tokens. Everyone's a little bit hard on this card, but I think this card's really good. I think this card is just really good at all times. You can always make some creatures, or then later, if you're wide enough, you can even pump all your creatures in. They have trample, so it's a mini overrun. And then the first ability is probably the ability that gets used the least. But the thing is that because these cards are so flexible, it means that you can run almost less removal in your deck, knowing that sometimes you can pop this off when you need it. How do you feel about this card?
I think it's fantastic. I think so it's very clear between this and another card that we're going to be talking about actually next after we're done with this. The Naya deck, the Cabaretti here, that
Yeah.
faction in New Capenna wants to go wide. There's no question about it. They are telegraphing that. You can see it from outer space. They want to go wide. They want to have as many creatures on the board as humanly possible. And this charm, you can see it in every single mode. Mode 1 is great if you have a wide board. Mode 2 is great if you have a wide board. Mode 3 is great if you don't have a wide board, but you want a wide board. It's just does all the things you want in a go wide aggro strategy. So I'm are also strategies that all 3 of these colors like to do. If you think about
Yep.
typical like monocolor decks, you got mono white weenie, you've got go wide white. Okay, great. You've got like when I think of red, I think of red rush aggro or
Goblins.
goblins. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you want to go wide. And in green, I generally think of more stompy, but you also got elves. So like it makes sense just from a color perspective, like all three of these colors can totally get behind the idea of creating a large army and attacking with it.
Oh yeah.
So that's what we're doing here. And the mini overrun at instant speed, I think, is absolutely like a mode that is going to devastate a lot of people. A lot of defensive players who think they lined their blocks just right and are feeling pretty good at like thinking, okay, I bought another turn, and then this comes out and it's like, well, nope, never mind.
I'm telling you, you're gonna lose this card. I think everyone's like,
sure.
oh, this is terrible. Oh, the first ability never gets played. It's like, yeah, maybe, but I mean, Kabira takedown was a card that got played sometimes. I mean, it's a dual face card. You know, gives you options. I mean, I think this card fuels itself. Like the first one, you can be like, all right, make 2 1/1s, and then I mean, listen, if you literally go like 1 drop into like I don't know something into pop into pack leader into end step, make 2 tokens, my turn again. Everyone has trample and +1/+1. I mean, you're swinging for like what 4, 6, 10 damage on turn 4, you know. And if you're not playing against a board wipe deck, I mean, even if you are, I mean, what are they gonna do? Like meat hook 3 your cards and then you still have a pack leader left? Like these are just examples, but or you Cabaretti, you make 2 1/1s and then you play Helena and Elena. And then before you know it, now you're smashing face, right? Your opponent that went removal spell was like, oh, I got him. And you're just like, end step 2 1/1s. It's time to start the new beatdown, right? Like,
right.
This card is great. It's a finisher. It's removal. It makes creatures. I don't really, like, this is like Abs and Charm. Where every mode is really powerful. You know, every mode is powerful on this card. Like, yeah, you're not drawing cards, but the ability to make 2 creatures off of 1 card is powerful. Having that flex to be a removal spell, just yeah. I mean, instant speed. Most of the time, you're killing 2 toughness, 3 toughness cards. You're not really asking to have too many cards out with this, you know.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think if you're going wide in Naya, you want to have these. I mean, probably 4 of these in your deck. Like it's just because every mode is useful at different stages of the game. But yeah, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great card.
No, and I think you're exactly right. We will all lose to this card. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen at least once. Like, you're going to make some really bad blocks. You're going to forget it exists, and then all of a sudden trample there, and then before you know it, Runes is laughing at you because they're like, aha, right. My Howler Haunting has 3 spirits out, and I just kill your card now. Or, oops, all my cards have trample.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that seems good.
It's going to be rough. It seems good. Exactly. It just seems pretty darn good.
Scalds. I mean, like, it's the cards that are already surrounding this card that we know are good is why I think this card is going to be good, because we haven't even seen the rest of the set with it, right? Like, I mean, hell, throw this in your bar class deck.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
why not?
You know, why not? Give all your legends trample. Make some more creatures for them. You know what I mean? Like, man, this card's great. I can't talk enough about this card, but.
Well, yeah, and and to your point, it's in a color combination. Like Naya is very strong right now.
Yeah, Naya's already a deck. It's like one of the best decks that you could be playing in Standard, and Best of One specifically too. Like, so this card is a card that could help. Like, I'm not saying this card is. There are metas where you could see this card be a 4 of, or certain decks you see this card be a 4 of. But I think at the start it's a 2 of already. I think it's that strong. Like, just there's options, man. I'm telling you, any point in the game, like so many players are going to be in positions where they're like, wow, I can kill that creature. I'm just going to do it and step. And then, wow, that weird tempo card, you know, did what it was supposed to do at the right time for me, you know? I think this card's going to surprise a lot of people more than what they think.
Couldn't agree more. So, speaking of Naya being a pretty cool deck, we have another Naya card that we're going to look at next, and that is Jetmir, Nexus of Revels. So this is a legendary creature cat demon. And this is one of the, so we know that the houses.
That creature type. That's like one of my favorite creature types.
Cat demon is great. It was funny, actually. Somebody on my stream today was like, is this the first cat demon we've ever seen? And my immediate reaction is, well, there was Luris, but it's like, wait a minute. No, that was a cat nightmare.
It's a cat nightmare. There's other cat demons. I can't think of them right now.
Yeah, I just assumed there were. I don't know. I can't name any off the top of my head. Anyway. That's just fun trivia fact for later. That I need to look that up and see. But in any event, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels, it is so 1 in the Naya colors, red, green, white, for a 5/4 cat demon. So already we have a 4-drop 5/4.
Good on stats.
Good on stats. Like, okay, this is a decent creature. But wait, there's more. It actually has quite a big text box. So here we go. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have vigilance, as long as you control 3 or more creatures. and this does count Jetmir themselves. So as long as you have 2 other creatures and Jetmir, all of a sudden all your creatures are +1/+0 and vigilant. That's nice, especially in a world where Wandering Emperor's out there. Vigilance is a big deal right now.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. So as long as we've got 5 creatures in addition to Jetmir, now all of a sudden everybody's getting +2/+0 vigilance and trample. Great. Then creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures.
Ooh, Hamhocks looking good. Hamhocks looking real good. But this card is like straight gasoline. Like, I just see the second mode of this card, like, just immediately you're like 6 creature, game's over.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like 6 creature, game's over.
I think the only issue, like the primary, not the only, but the primary issue with Jetmir is that you're just gonna end the game before you get to that last ability.
Yeah.
Like,
you don't need the double strike, really. Like,
you don't. The double strike is just icing. Like, if you can get there, great. The Vigilance and Trample is gonna do the job. Like,
yeah, who doesn't like your whole team getting Embercleave, but...
Exactly. Well, it's funny because when we were looking at Broker's Ascendancy, it's almost like everybody gets a Luminarch Aspirant at the end of the turn. Okay, great. With Jetmir, it's like everybody gets an Embercleave. Like,
right now.
What? That's ridiculous, and I love it.
The curves with this card are insane. Like, we talked about Pups, Luminarch Aspirants, talk about all these random cards in different colors. Well, I mean, yeah, you go Pup into Luminarch into end step Charm, make 2 tokens, my turn, play this. You already have 5 creatures down, or the better play is like, I don't know, any 1-drop into the whatever the Raise the Alarm is in Standard at the moment, right? 2 mana, make 2 1/1s, and then Charm, make another 2 1/1s. So now you have 5 creatures. Then you play this. Now everyone's getting +2 and trample on turn 4. Like, boom, fantastic. You're already like doing everything you want to do with that deck, right? And then you spent what, 1 card a turn? So you still have some of a hand, right? If you're on the play, you probably down some cards, but if you're on the draw, I mean, definitely still have cards. So I mean, even, you know, I'm talking about one of the better scenarios you could do with this card, right? Like, this card, this card's really good. I think it's really good. It's not a 4 of, though, I don't believe. I think that's where it's probably pushing it, right?
Probably. Because at the end of the day, it is a legendary creature, so... Yeah, there's only so much you can do with it.
Yeah, but by itself, it doesn't do much. You know, it needs like other cards with it.
I just want to throw this out there, though. Could you imagine this in a deck alongside Mirror Box and Bard Class?
Oh,
I don't know if it's good, but it could be fun.
With Kiki, I guess Kiki can't copy Legends, but yeah, that still sounds pretty. I think this card has legs. I think this makes the Naya deck stronger.
Absolutely.
Another 2. I think to me, another 2 of right off the bat. Right off the bat, you play 2 of the cards, see if it's good.
It's funny. The first thing that I thought of with this card is how many bodies can I get for a single card? You know, how many cards are out there that can produce a number of bodies on the board? You know, and there are those, you know, inexpensive token generators like you mentioned. I mean, Wedding Announcement also comes to mind because over the course of a couple of turns, that can produce a number of tokens for you that, you know, help you get that, you know, the body count up, which is exactly what you're looking for. But the one that I thought of is, I don't think it's good, but I'm going to build it because I love playing weird, dumb jank. And that's Phylath.
Oh, that card's cool. It makes a lot of tokens at once,
Just makes a ton of 0/1 plant tokens at once. And so all of a sudden, all of those 0/1 plant tokens could in fact be 3/1 plant tokens with Vigilance, Trample, and Double Strike. That could be fun. Again, I don't know if it's good.
Mascot.
But it could be fun. And I want to make it happen.
With,
Mascot would be good too, yeah.
Or whatever, because you already probably want to do that, right, in your deck. You can probably throw some of those cards. You can play the Professor, the 2-drop. You play that card or whatever it is, and then you can
Professor
already
Symbology or the Gnarl Professor in green. Both would fit.
Yeah. See, you can play like 2, 1, like any combinations of those cards already in your deck, and you know, Trample Vigilance is great. Just having a card that has Vigilance is good. You being able to block. All these cards are great. I mean, this has the power to really get there. I think the only downside of it is Legendary and Hamhocks. Until Hamhocks is gone, I think it's going to be really hard for you to make even like 1 toughness decks because of that card. But when that card gets pushed out a little bit more, I mean, maybe there's things that make that card get pushed out in this format where maybe there's chonky decks that Meathook doesn't do enough against, right? Where right now, what we're seeing is those smaller toughness, low to the ground creature decks. That's why Meathook is good in both, whether you
Right.
want to be control or the aggro deck.
Well, and I think you're touching on something that's even bigger than just Meathook Massacre. But right now in Standard, there are so many sweepers. They're everywhere. Meathook is definitely like best in class. I'll give you that. Like that card is insane.
And
There's no
Farewell.
question about it.
Those two are the best. Farewell is the best if you can get to
Oh,
it.
Farewell's fantastic as well.
Yeah.
But we got Farewell, we've got Doomscar, we've got Vanquish the Horde, we've got Undo Inversion still. Not that anyone plays it, but it's there.
There's one in Alchemy, the Celestia one in Alchemy.
Yep. Begin Anew, I think it's called. Yes. There's so many. Actually, Begin Anew might fit in a Jetmir deck now that I think about it. But anyway, yeah, it's bonkers.
So many
how
cards.
many sweepers there are out there. They're everywhere. But given how aggressive aggro is, if you're going to be playing any form of control, you have to be running a ton of sweepers.
Yep.
It just is what it is. And so as a result, I think Jetmir and the Cabaretti go wide tactic is going to be very difficult to pull off. When it happens and that sweeper doesn't check it, it'll actually be very interesting to see if there's a heroic intervention style effect.
Ooh, I was just thinking that.
Just something that can protect your team.
There's the card that phases. The card that phases exists.
You're right. Guardian of Faith.
Sorry, folks. Yeah, Guardian. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, Guardian of Faith would be fantastic in that. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Or there's also the Kaldheim card that shout outs to Ace Bayleaf, the Protector. It's like exile any number of non-angels you have, and then they come back.
That's right. I forget about that card all the time.
That card exists too. So I mean, you have all kinds of ways to protect still. So I mean, it's there's also Linvala. I love Linvala's blue, but I mean, we're gonna have triumphs. So give me a little bit of a stretch here. But Linvala can give all your stuff indestructible. I mean, that card's great.
Or Selfless Glyphweaver is another one that's still out there.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, slash
that one is
play the other side. Let's go.
Yep. Yeah. Why not? Let's go for it. Yeah. There are options. I guess that's what it comes down to. There are options. Yeah.
This card has the potential.
I love it.
So moving on to our next card here. This one actually a lot of people are pretty excited about. I think I don't know if it's just because it's a commander card or if it really is the finisher, but we have it kind of sounds like a Zoolander name. We have Lord Xander, the Collector, which is 4 colorless, a blue, black, and a red for a vampire demon noble. It's a legendary creature, 6/6. Whenever it enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand rounded down. Whenever it attacks, defended player mills half their library rounded down. Whenever it dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control rounded down. Ham, if this card hits the battlefield, run. Concede the game.
Stuff happens. Yeah, there's no question about it.
Happens. If this card sticks around, you probably lose the game very easily.
Yeah.
It's not a hole breaker, but it's, I compare it to Jin kind of card where no matter what, if Jin gets access, hits the battlefield and sticks around, you lose the game. And
pretty much, yeah.
This is kind of one of those cards where, like, if this resolves, I mean, you lose your hand. Most of your hand's gone wherever you're at. You're going to lose some cards.
Yeah.
If it attacks, you're just going to lose your deck. You're just going to lose the game to it attacking. And if you even get to kill it, it's half of your non-land permanents. You're pretty much going to lose half your board to this card no matter what. If you still even have a board, because these are the colors of, stopping you from playing Magic. I mean, I can already see it in your face. You're like, man, if I can get this down on turn 3, look out.
No, if I'm in exactly, and if I'm in like Historic or Alchemy, where I can pull off a reanimation on turn 3 with like either Priest of Fellrights or an Assemble from Parts, and I can get the sucker down. Oh yeah, the thing with I'm intrigued by that. I am, as a reanimator, as a lover of all things reanimation, I'm intrigued by the possibilities of getting Xander down quickly, because I think that's what you need to do, because since it's hitting half the hand and half the library, and it's also rounded down, which is kind of a bummer. Like, can't we just round that up? I mean, come on. But whatever. Maybe that's
Can't
just me.
Just me really decimate the opponent here.
Yeah, let's just really drive it home. But if it's late in the game, and you're in top deck mode and they're down to 20 cards, like, and the battlefields are kind of sparse because you've just been playing kind of an attrition game. Xander's not going to really have much of an impact aside from just being a 6/6 body, which may be exactly what you need. So I guess even in that situation, it's not nothing.
Yeah, exactly. This card is in the Is It color combination, so I think
True.
that whether or not, so treasures, number one, treasures, you
Yep.
could just get this card out quicker.
True.
Number two, you're already going to be playing, you're probably putting it in that type of deck anyways, so you're going to stall until you can get this card down, even if you don't get it down early. I mean, if you do, man, if you go like Prismari Command or, like Opus End Step, make a treasure, into Prismari Command, make a treasure, you can get this out super quick, like you're saying, and before you know it, like you're just down on you can lose the game by just discarding like 2 or 3 cards to this.
Yeah, because if your opponent is sitting on 4 cards in hand, they're feeling pretty decent. But then when Xander hits, all of a sudden you just mind rot them, and you've established a 6/6 on the board.
Yeah, and you have a 6/6 that they have to kill upside. This card, like.
Right, and yeah, exactly, a threat that they have to address. This actually is another one of those. To be honest, I was pretty low on Xander when I first saw it. And I think a big part of it was that everybody was talking about its impact in Commander, which is kind of meh. It's one of those where if you put Lord Xander in your command zone, everybody's going to target you immediately. It's a 7-drop, so it's going to be a real pain in the butt to cast.
I don't want to see this card.
And then once you cast it, you have to pick someone to mess up.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to play it. I don't want to see it. It's just
exactly. I don't want to play against it. I don't want to play with it
so much. I got PTSD from Rogues like everybody else does that played a year ago. And
it's funny because I play a lot of Reanimator and I don't use Hullbreaker Horror just because you have to build with Hullbreaker, you have to have some kind of follow-up plan to make it really fire.
You have to have a lot of spells to be able to cast.
You gotta have a lot of spells.
Just be able to keep stopping your opponent every turn from doing things.
Yeah, and so as a result, I prefer to reanimate Toxtrol or Coma or Velomachus, other threats.
Just a big
and Xander could absolutely work its way into that rotation. Yeah,
this card's great. It might be better than we think. It probably costs too much mana. Maybe it's just a commander card. I don't know. I don't want to say if it's bad or not because we don't know if it's just a ridiculous one of you playing your control deck, right?
Right, exactly. But at the same time, like I want to try, like, and this is just me. This is how I operate. I want to try to build a deck around this where I'm leveraging sacrifice effects and sacrifice effects, reanimation effects, as well as cards like Malakir Rebirth. That when a creature dies, it comes back immediately. Like, could you imagine having Lord Xander, like reanimating Lord Xander on turn 4 or 5? You attack your opponent's hand, maybe get a swing in, nail a big chunk of their library, and then sacrifice Lord Xander to hit it with a Malakir Rebirth, sacrifice it during a deadly dispute. Your opponent sacrifices half their permanents, and then Xander comes right back and hits whatever cards they have left in their hand, and is now untapped and can block. Like, well, Malakir Rebirth is a bad example. It comes back in tap, but anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, so like. It's doing effectively, blink shenanigans in black. It takes a few more cards, but you can do it.
It has more potential. I think this card could. It's not anything crazy. It's not a card you play 4 of. It's just like either you're gonna reanimate it or it's just like the ultimate control finisher where you're just like, all right, in the mirror match, I just cast this, have it resolve, and then the game ends because you only have to attack with it like twice, and then that's it. You don't have to deal 20 damage with this card. You just have to attack twice, and then the game's just over. And if it dies and they have stuff out, I mean, their stuff's gone. Half of their stuff's gone, so...
Yeah, it puts them in a really weird... Like, once Xander's on the field, if they don't have exile removal, it puts them in a really tough spot. And notably, Xander is immune to Vanishing Verse because it's multicolor, so that's really nice.
That's a card that's... right now, Ham, you make a great point. It's a card that gets played a ton. It's like a tier 1 card, and with this set, we actually could see it downgrade by a lot. I played the book club. We do this draft every week, and last week I drafted 2 Vanishing Verses, but in the finals against Simic, every one of his cards was multicolored. I couldn't do anything.
Oh no!
Literally couldn't do anything, and I drew them, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, man, these cards would be great if I could kill their cards. And that's kind of where you might end up seeing a lot of players end up once this set comes out, where they're going to be like, maybe looking at these deck lists, maybe Vanishing Verse isn't the best idea, right?
Meanwhile, yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Rite of Oblivion still looks great.
Oh, yeah. I think
deck, that one is
gas. Yeah, that's like one of the best cards, I think, for removal you could play. It's just So it's 6 mana, kill, exile 2 things. If you have 2 permanents to sack, you know, it's just a great card.
Yeah, and that Xander's going to probably eat a lot of those, I'd imagine, because that's the best answer to
this
him.
card's going to die.
Yeah, it's got to.
If you most of the time, your opponents, if you're playing control, they got that one removal spell they've been holding unless you... Yeah, main deck duress is a thing nowadays, so maybe that could change it, but...
Maybe. We'll see. If they can't get it out of if they can't counter it on the way down, yeah, they got to exile it. Otherwise, it's going to wreck them. Yeah.
You want to grab this next one here?
Absolutely. So the next one that we have is another 3-color demon, and that is Raffine Scheming Seer. It is white, blue, black for a 1/4 Sphinx demon. I like Sphinxes. Flying, ward 1. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature connives X, where X is the number of attacking creatures. And when you connive, this is a new keyword in New Capenna, you draw X cards, then discard X cards, so it's a looting effect, and you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature for each non-land card discarded this way.
This card is absurd. I just think this card is like, I didn't really read it. Like, I didn't read most of the cards on here, but like now that I'm like reading this now, I'm like, this card's better than the other card that we just read almost. Like, this card is like, this card's messed up, man. What? This card like stalls aggro, stalls your hand, withdraws cards when it attacks. This card is like flies. Like, this card is nuts, right? Like, I don't know, man. This card seems pretty powerful to me. Like, the fact that you're able to do, I mean, you just play it and then you're like block, block, block. All right, now that we can attack, if we have a Kaido Ninja out, we're drawing 2, discarding a card. You know, we're getting some filter going. If we attack with a creature land in this, you know, we're getting some extra value while we're at it too. Like, this card seems very, very strong, and the color combination that it's in specifically is this is about as Esper as it gets for me. I don't know. This is pretty Esper, man.
Yeah, and this strikes me as a really good tempo card. Like, I want to put this in an Esper tempo deck where you hit Raffine as early in the game as you possibly can. It's got flying, so it's got the built-in evasion, so it can swing pretty consistently. It's got ward 1, which isn't a lot, but it's something. That can throw... It's tax, exactly. It taxes your opponent for trying to hit the thing, which is great. And you can even see it shows like a little like glowing shield around this, you know, Raffine of the artwork. You're like showing off the word.
Scheming.
They nailed it. Like, but the connive ability on this card, like if you have multiple creatures attacking, it gets even better. But if you don't, like assuming Raffine is your only creature on the board, you swing with Raffine, you connive 1. You draw a card, and then you can discard any card in your hand. So you have just perfect card selection. And if you discard a non-land card, you put a +1/+1 counter before combat damage is dealt, and as a result, Raffine becomes a 2/5. So even on the very first attack, you're hitting for 2 in the air, and you have 5 toughness back to block any, you know, well, it doesn't have vigilance, but, you know, you have a 5 toughness creature, it's going to be very hard to remove. And then if you swing again the next turn, it becomes a 3/6 all of a sudden. And so the pressure that you put on your opponent escalates as this creature is able to swing. And if you do manage to go wide, if you do have a token strategy, or you have 2 or 3 other creatures, like if you have
this card's busted.
I don't know, like one.
I didn't even know it got counters. I didn't even read that part.
Yeah,
I totally missed that part. Ham, this card's busted. I'm just gonna call it right now. This card is gonna get played. It's
fantastic. Well, can you imagine Raffine with a Suspicious Stowaway? Like, that's all you need.
Yeah,
those 2 together.
There we go. Yep.
You know, so you swing with...
I didn't even know it got counters.
Those things get counters. 1 attacking creature connives X. So you draw X cards so you draw cards equal to the number of attacking creatures, then you discard that number of cards. For every non-land you discard, they get that many counters. So if you swing with a Suspicious Stowaway and Raffine, you draw 2 cards, discard 2 non-lands, you put the 2 counters on the Suspicious Stowaway, you now have a 3/3 attacking, and when it connects, assuming it's daytime, you draw and discard again. If it's nighttime, you just straight draw a card again. The option, and we're just scratching the surface here.
This card, like, you play this card in a beatdown deck. You don't even care. Yeah. You're literally like, I just love the plays of like 1-drop into Luminarch into this, and then you're like, all right, make my Luminarch like a 4/4. Draw 2 cards and discard a card, and then this card seems
and you're talking to me here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to discard. Actually, you know what? I probably, knowing me,
I won't have any card.
I'm going to discard Xander, and then hit it with a Return Upon the Tide the next turn and reanimate him. Like, that's what I'm gonna do with this.
God.
I know it's right there. We did it.
This I really
It's
do
bonkers.
think in all, like, I know I always over exaggerate some things, but I really do think this card is really strong. It just so it doesn't have to target itself. It gets a counter when it attacks. It draws cards. It has protection. It has flying. It's a 3 mana card. It has a 4 toughness, so it gets around most red removals. I think luckily it does die to Valor Stance. So
that's true. There's that.
That's on purpose, right? I mean, at least, but Valor Stance is always going to kill this card.
100%.
Rebuke kills it. I mean, so there's ways, but at the end of the day, I just think this card is really powerful. You're gonna lose to this card very, very quickly. This card, it's just Kaido. Before you know it, they've drawn like 5 cards. They have like the perfect hand. You're not gonna be able to do anything. Even if you try to kill it, you kill one. Okay, don't care. You got some value out of it. It's just another card in a mid-range control deck. So, I think this card just, man, it's. Oh, Ham. This is how I felt about Wander. Where like Wander, I read Wander and I was like, okay. I read it and I was like, I didn't even care. I was like, it just has flash. I was like, this card is insane. It has flash. I didn't even care what most of the Wander Emperor's abilities were. I was like, this card just has flash. It's a planeswalker. This card doesn't have flash, but just blocking, drawing. It does everything you want to do in a control deck. This card just
totally.
I'm sure there's so many control mages, mid-range mages out there that love playing the Esper combo, that combination, that they're going to get they're really excited about this card probably. I know I am.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
Like, this gets me excited, and it's not even the deck I like to play, and I think this card's nuts.
I'm right there with you. Now, I don't play a lot of Esper, but like I did get a chance to play the Esper Planeswalkers deck not too long ago. Another video on this channel. If you're not currently subscribed, definitely hit that button. But
sure.
Yeah, just throwing that out there, shameless plug. But like the Esper Planeswalker deck that's been kind of running roughshod over tournaments or in the right now. I want this card in that deck.
Yeah, this card's sweet. Like this,
it's just like it slots right in. I 100% want this in there. And at the same time, like in like some kind of white weenie situation or like some kind of go wide situation, I want this card in that deck too.
It's like, so weird. This card is so powerful.
Versatile.
You can put it in any deck that plays these 3 colors. You don't even care. You're like, I just play it. It's like the best 3-drop I could play in those colors. Like I just don't even care.
Yeah, am I in Azorius Control? Splash black for it. Great. Am I in Jetmir? Like freaking aggro ninjas? Don't care. Splash white. Get it in here.
Yeah.
Like it's so good. I think this is another one of those cards. The more I look at it, the more I just I'm
glad it doesn't have Shroud.
Yes.
I'm glad I can interact with it. That's all I'm going to say about the card. Glad the Hexproof doesn't really rear its head too much, Shroud, any of this stuff. Because if this card was untargetable, I would be very, very, very upset with this card as someone who plays more aggro mid-range type decks.
Yeah.
This card turning into a 2/5 already, I'm like, oh no. I'm like, oh no, it's just going to sit there and just block, stop me.
Yeah, like if it gets one good attack off, like it's gonna be really hard to remove with anything damage based.
Yeah, it's gross. Card is so powerful. I really do think I do think it's like so far it's of all the cards we've seen, like besides the Triumphs, I think this card's a guaranteed, like you're gonna see this card.
100%.
I think that's a craft.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, exactly. Like if you have the mythic wild cards,
100%
just get it. Day one, go grab it.
Yeah, day one, craft like 2 of them. And then after about like an hour, you're going to realize how ridiculous that card is, and you start building these other decks that have it in it.
Yeah, and if you're like me, you're going to craft 4 Xanders immediately and regret it the next day, but,
hey, like I did Valky.
Focus on Raffine.
Valky was the first card I crafted with Kolheim. I was on stream, and I was like, hey, everybody, let's what are we crafting? Everyone's like, Valky's pretty good. I crafted Valky. Next person that came to my stream was like, "Oh, Valky's not that good." I was like, "Don't
tell me that.
Don't say it. No, my wild cards." But anyways,
wild cards. Yes. So we have one other card that we want to talk about today, and I gotta say, like, I've been enjoying this. This like these New Capenna, I think is going to be just very strong, and it feels like a legitimate 3-color set. And the next one, there's one other charm that we're discussing this, by the way, if you're curious, like, why didn't we not mention this with the other charms? We're discussing this in the order in which they were previewed,
Yeah, the way
and
that
this
they
was
were
the most
spoiled.
recently spoiled.
Yeah.
Yep. And so definitely keep an eye on the channel for future spoiler videos, because as spoiler season progresses, you know, we're definitely going to be talking about them.
We're gonna know who was
the last
right.
one,
We'll have a top. We're gonna do a top 10 list at the end of spoilers right before the set comes out. So that way we'll have a list of what our essentially like ranking is of where we think the cards will be in both
like
constructed and in limited as well.
Cool. And then later on, and then we can look back and realize how off my picks were, which sounds great.
I think me and Hearsay did pretty good when we had guests. And Holebreaker.
Nice.
Holebreaker, we were both like, this card's broken. I thought it was like bannable
good.
Immediately.
Yeah,
like...
good eye on that one. Meanwhile, I'm over here, like when I saw the Neon Dynasty, I remember looking at Wanderer, like, she's good, but is she great? I don't know.
Flash.
Like, yeah,
I was like, this card's nuts.
Flash,
like,
you're right.
I was like, it's not gonna die. I was like,
people are like, it's like settle the wreckage. It's like, but you can only remove one thing. What's the big deal? It's like, yeah, but it's a planeswalker. Like
in standard, you don't even care. You're like, oh, I gain some life and remove one of your cards, and then yeah, we could talk about Wandering Emperor.
Yeah. Anyway,
that card is ghastly.
But last,
yep, our last card.
So last, but certainly not least, Riveteers Charm. This is a black, red, and green. So this is Jund colors, which we haven't seen too much of the Jund action, but let's see what this one's all about. Choose one. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So Soul Shatter already. Love it.
Already good.
Option 2. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards.
Ooh.
Impulsive draw for 3 cards. Sounds great.
Ooh.
I know, right? Final mode. Exile target player's graveyard.
Sure. It's fine. Like, the last ability on this is, you know, it's gonna exile some things. It's fine. Like, it's gonna be times where, yeah, you're gonna do it, where I'm playing against Hamhocks. Hamhocks plays his Grixis Charm and mills some cards, and then I'm like, ha 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 ha, exile your graveyard end step, my turn. With my main
happen.
My main deck spell that you shouldn't have a main deck graveyard hate like that in, you know, so
right.
The other two modes. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's actually something I really dislike, because I'm going to be playing my Raffine. I'm going to like connive Lord Xander and Tox Turtle into my graveyard and feel like $1 million, and then it's like Riveteers Charm. I'm like,
sorry,
no!
Hamhocks. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah, but you'll get to
turn
turn 7 and still cast it against me, and I'll lose, and that'll
we'll
be the game.
But yeah, anyway.
But so the rest of the card, I mean, so Soul Shatter is a rare. This card's uncommon, but you understand the power level of that card. You being able to make your opponent sacrifice the best thing they have, like a Wandering Emperor or Lolth sometimes, right? They're like, oh, how am I going to get rid of this? I'll just make them sack it at instant speed as well. The second part of this card is just so nutty to me. Like, this card is literally Escape to the Wilds. Without you getting the extra land drop. This is Showdown of the Skalds. This is like, this card is, I think this card's really good.
Yeah.
I think this is, I don't know if, yeah, it's probably better than the Naya Charm. I think this is potentially the Brio Absent Charm. There's removal, there's card draw, and instead of you putting +1/+1 counters on stuff, you actually get exile player's graveyard, which could be a relevant thing at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of flashback running around, so that's something. And I think Aghanim, yep, yeah, I think the I think having the option is really nice, because I think reanimation is going to be a thing, but it's not going to be a top tier thing. I would be shocked if there's a tier 1 reanimator deck, just because there hasn't been in so long. Don't get me wrong, I want it, but I just don't expect to see it. And having main deckable graveyard hate just in Jund colors for everybody to use is going to definitely hinder that. But the other thing that I want to point out about the second mode, you're right, that card is insane. Like, it's draw 3 cards.
It's Escape to the Wilds at instant speed.
It's draw 3 cards for 3.
Yeah,
that's
draw
amazing.
3 cards for 3. That's like, man, I'm telling you, this card is like, I just get excited about stuff like that. Like, I'd love drawing cards. Like, 3 for 3. There's no downside.
The only downside is the timing restriction.
Right, the timing restriction, yeah.
Until your next end step, you might play those cards. So, little PSA for everyone. Do not rip this on your main phase.
Yeah, you'll lose this card right away.
You just lose the cards almost immediately. Like it's definitely not a turn 3. You need to have mana back. But also wait until your opponent's turn. If you hit it on your opponent's end step, you get to untap and have your whole turn to play. You to manipulate those 3 cards however you see fit.
Another turn 5.
Hopefully
turn
one of them's a
6
land.
play.
You got some other stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can play this
like
end
you want to
step,
wait until
hit another instant, kill their other card. My turn, play one of the other creatures I hit off of it. Play the land drop.
The amount.
Like the value is insane on this card, Ham. Like the value on this card's insane.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because actually you're discussing the cool things you can do on the end steps with each of the charms, because all of them have some crazy cool value that you can set up on your opponent's end step that can tee you up for your turn with whatever strategy you're trying to build around, whatever you're doing with these colors.
Yeah, need some creatures, get some tokens, you know, do this.
I think the charms are all great. Like all the charms we've seen so far are they're just cool.
They're really powerful. I mean, you just have so many, like, man, those abilities are so strong. Like, back in the day, like, the Grixis one would have been like, counter target spell unless they pay 3. Right? It would have been like a bad mana leak or something. And now I feel like instead it's like an outright counter. It's a little bit more specific, but it's an outright counter. And then you also have cards like, I just... tell you this card's nuts. Draw 3, man. Oh, I don't even know how to... wow. Like, if you're playing this in an aggro deck, like, yeah, you're like, turn 4, I don't know, do it. And then on my turn, I'm just, like, casting the 3 cards I got. They're like board wipe. You're like, cool, draw 3 Scalds. Showdown of the Scalds on your end step. Like, I don't care. You know, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's pretty much what this card feels like, really, you know? Like, it's...
pretty much.
I think this is the 4 of. In my opinion, I think this card's the 4 of. Because it's never going to be bad. Like, it's always like, you don't care if you say go, and then they cast their 3-drop, and then you're like, in response, sack it your 3-drop, take whatever damage from a 2-drop, go back to me. Elena, pump my 2-drop that I played earlier, and then now the game's like out of control, and then later on, the ones that I draw later are going to fuel me, stop, getting me late. Like, top deck wars, like, yeah, I'll take a draw 3 for 3.
100%.
That I could play other instants off of, or like I said, get to my turn, build my board again. Like, this card's great. The card's gonna get played.
It's just great.
I could see it maybe where it really does end up being the 3 of or something like that, 2 or 3 of. But to me, I'm playing this card as like a 4 of in my Jund deck. I'm gonna use treasures off my Goldspan to cast this card.
Oh, yes.
You know, float some mana, get some things, more things off the top, cast another charm, draw some more cards.
Well, I mean, okay.
Yeah,
I need to amend my previous statement. If you're playing Goldspan and you have like 3 or 4 treasures lying around, go ahead and rip this on your main phase. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and then attack. Well, exactly. Yeah, what you want to do is you want to attack, get that 8th treasure or that 4th treasure, get that 8th mana, and then you're like, yeah, cast this my second main, rebuild my board.
Yeah.
Or use the Goldspan treasure you have laying around to cast your other Goldspan.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
This card's great. I'm telling you, this
it's great.
Escape to the Wilds, like, Showdown of the Scalds is just Escape to the Wilds. That's what I said when I first saw it. I was like, the only difference is it costs less mana, which is great, and you don't get an extra land drop. So, I mean, you don't really care, because later in the game you get that land drop anyways if you haven't made it, or if it smooths your draws for the rest of the game at that point. But this card, this is instant speed. It costs 1 less mana even. Now we're making Escape to the Wilds cheaper every time we print it. And I just think that it gets played every time. It was a card that got banned. And if they print cards like that, I just feel like in modern Magic, when the games get grindy, I lose a lot of those games because they get their Kaido, they get their Bank Buster, they get all these cards that before you know, you're like, oh, I hate seeing this card, because when I'm 1 for 1, 1 for 1, 1 for 1, they got this card that's 4 for 1 that makes up for me 1 for 1, and then before you know it, you lose the game because of that. This card is a card that helps you battle a Bank Buster, where you're like, yeah, Bank Buster's cool, but I'm going to get my 3 cards right now. Rather than 1 card a turn for 2 mana, or slow it, 4 mana, the first initial investment before you get your first card in your hand. And, this card's the opposite, where for 3 mana at instant speed, you're getting 3 cards. So, I think this card's going to be great. It's a grindy card. I don't really know what else to say about it, honestly.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I think it's It's just good. Like every mode is good. And I think the last mode is only going to be relevant about 5% of the time, but man,
Oh, when
there's
it
going to be
hits,
5% of the time
ooh,
when it hits, it's going to be
when
great.
it
Yeah.
slaps, when they know, like if they're a graveyard strategy and they don't show you right away and you
Mhm.
cast one of these, they're gonna be like, oh no, they're gonna be like, I need to cast my cards because if they have
Yep.
open mana, knowing that they have this in your deck, you're just gonna get blown out.
Oh, and I can't tell you how many times I've been playing historic and been playing a reanimator deck, and I have the discard outlet, and they just drop like a Tormod script. And it's like, well, I guess I'm just holding everything in my hand. Like, I'm just not gonna
Gonna
discard. I
cast
guess
these
I'm hard
7
casting my
drops
doctrine this game.
later. Yeah.
You know, and Riveteers Charm, it's like, well, if I see Jund available to them, like, well, if I see Jund mana, I
I
probably need to be really careful about what I put in my graveyard,
think
because
this
it's
card can
probably
get
not gonna
played in
stick
everything,
around.
man. I think this card is so
Hmm.
good that this card has the option to get played in different formats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just that Escape to the Wilds ability plus the Graveyard ability. If anything, once you get older formats like Historic, that Graveyard ability turns from a 5% to like a 25% chance you're going to play against a deck that has to do with the Graveyard. Oh, they got Luris?
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Right, and between
You
with
know,
all the
like,
lure stacks running around, we got Phoenix, we got you know, the Golgari food deck leverages the graveyard to some extent. Like, yeah, I
kills
mean,
Phoenix and exiles the Graveyard. This card does it all against that deck.
it's true. Yeah, no, Riveteers Charm is actually fantastic. Ooh, historic Jund, the Phoenix Buster. I'm here for it. Let's go.
Yeah, Jund mid range to Historic. Let's go. The deck one of my first
I'm in.
modern decks. Just Goyf and Dark Confidant. Those days were great. Yeah, I just think
I love
think
it.
this card's great. I really do. I think it's gonna get played. Definitely a constructed card for sure.
100%.
And if you get a chance to see any of these charms in limited, definitely pick them up because in limited they're all playable no matter what. Like they all have their utility, especially if you built your deck right.
Oh yeah, and at uncommon, you're gonna see them. Yeah, it's
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
fantastic.
But yeah, we got through the cards right now that we have available to us. There's gonna be a lot more cards here in the next few days, next few weeks. We're gonna get more spoilers, so definitely stay in tune with the YouTube channel. We're gonna have more content on the cards as well, and we do appreciate you sticking around here till the end of the video. So if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Hamhocks, where can we find you at again?
You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Hamhocks42. I stream there Monday through Friday in the morning. And I also have my own YouTube channel if you want to see just some fun janky brews. If you want to see me pilot meta decks, this is the place to be. If you want to see me pilot my own weird inventions, or things that my community on stream have, you know, challenged me to build, my YouTube channel, also named Hamhocks42, is where you can find that.
Oh yeah, and all the links to these are going to be in the description below. I do thank you again for joining us. It's been a lot of fun discussing this new set, and already the card's just looking great. I'm really enjoying it so far. It definitely has that Neon Dynasty feel already, where the flavor and the cards are good, which, you know, that's what you really need. When you have both of those, you have a really great set. So thanks again,
Absolutely.
everybody. And as always, stay cheesy. Catch you next time.